Now this scene, parts of this scene are still in the movie.
Yes, some of it's used in a montage establishing the school. Originally, the idea of this scene was not only to introduce Storm as a teacher, but also the lesson she's teaching is on the conversion of the Roman Empire to Christianity, which occurred under the rule of Emperor Constantine. And the idea is that the emperor declared and that his leadership and his governing body would become Christian, and therefore the entire Roman Empire became Christian, and that is why Christianity, or one of the reasons, it's the dominant religion, one of the dominant religions in the world. And the idea is it's sort of a setup for Magneto's plan. You know, we turned the world leaders into mutants, and then they in turn, then the rights of mutants become, you know, more easily attained. So that's kind of where that lesson plan. And we also introduced Jubilee by name in this as well.
Now this is in the film, but with finished visual effects.
Yeah, this is kind of, you know, temp effects. There's no, in these deleted scenes, there's no, obviously no music, no sound design. It's just sort of the raw dailies cut together.
Now where did this play in the movie previously?
Around where the montage plays now. And then it was nice. This was shot also in the it was a solarium in Castle Loma, a beautiful room. It was almost like we have to shoot something here. It's just so beautiful.
Well, that ceiling piece that's at the beginning of this is gorgeous.
Yeah, you see it a bit in the actual film. And then we just added as a visual effect just the little. You don't see it in here, but just the little sparkles forming, and then this is just
and the sound of
little
the ice sort of crackling.
Actual ice rose, and then the sound. Yeah.
Where does one go to get an ice rose?
One makes them. This starts the relationship between Cyclops and Jean Grey, and how it's seen through the eyes of Wolverine, and also reiterates Cyclops' interest in automotive education.
And it also shows that talking about carburetors gets Jean Grey hot.
Yeah. And then this is a Bobby. You know, there was more of a bit of a subplot between Bobby Drake and Rogue, and this is him asking her on a date, which eventually plays off in a little scene where we see them try to start their relationship, but we definitely, in the sequel, carry that forward. And then also this helped establish Rogue's relationship with the school, and the thought of maybe a school for mutants is to help them be cured. And she explains, you know, Storm explains that, you know, that's not what we're about.
I didn't know there were places like this.
It's a nice beat. A lot of these deleted beats are really nice beats independent of the movie, but they, you know, perhaps if we had more time, they could have been worked in.
Can he actually
you
cure
know.
me? I don't think it really works like that.
This scene is a bit longer than in the actual film. It again reinforces the relationship between Jean Grey and Cyclops, and also Cyclops' power. She talks about, you know, Cyclops' need for control. It also is kind of a scene about what they learn, you know, what the benefit of the school is. You know, here's a guy who, if he opens his eyes, he'll, you know, destroy everything in sight.
Punch a hole through a mountain.
Punch a hole through a mountain. But
Sure he is.
But with the visor, you know, and his sense of control, he's able to.
Well, it's part of what goes on at the school, learning to live with the powers, how to use them.
As, you know, consider them gifts as opposed to curses. Here, but really, the underlying nature of the scene is about him
this attraction.
him trying to prod her by taking down the other guy, taking down the fiance. And it's a nice moment for Cyclops because, as you'll see at the end of the scene, he kind of gives it back to Wolverine.
Wait.
In this moment when she reads his mind, I think in this deleted scene, for some reason, they've cut this one shot, which I ran around the day we were shooting the Wolverine flashbacks with an 8mm camera, and this is a piece of that.
Oh, that's interesting.
A very small piece. Yeah, I just ran around, shot 2.5 minutes.
It looks like the Zapruder film of the Weapon X.
I think it was the same camera. And it had a little underwater housing, so I stuck it underneath into the actual tank, and it just didn't cut well with the 35mm bleached bypass material that we did, so I never used it. But
I hear there's, with Cyclops and Wolverine, there's some added dialogue here.
yeah, there. And it also hinted at, when he talks about combat, it also hinted at Wolverine's past, that he had memories, that there was some sense that he had fought, but I also felt this was a little too revealing and would shortchange what I wanted to do with the sequel. I needed to leave that more open. I didn't want to hint too much at, dealing with his memory. His memories ended 15 years ago. Anything he did as a soldier, anything like that, anything that happened pre-dog tag was a true mystery, and that needed to wait until X-Men 2. This is a little beat, Rogue getting dropped off, and I like how all the girls start listening, or just start, emotion closer to the door, and also establishing that she can't be touched, and how does the dating process work if you can't touch someone? Well, again,
That's a really good question.
yeah, well, use a unique form of contraception.
That's a whole other movie.
Latex Men. This scene also hints at something that I didn't feel it was advantageous to get too into, which was Jean's expanding powers. It was something I wanted to hint at, but it wasn't really appropriate. In the sequel, there's a coupling of her use of Cerebro, when she finally does use it, perhaps with what happens at Liberty Island, that causes a kind of, it's not the primary story, but there's some effect it's had on her. And
Yeah, we didn't mention it while watching the body of the film, but there is a reaction she has in the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, in the Statue of Liberty, there's
seems like foreshadowing.
There's a moment where after the light effect, after that big energy is dissipated, the first cut is to Jean Grey, and she just sort of looks at herself like, whoa. And again, it's not a primary issue. It's not something that's a focus of the sequel, but there's that element. Another nice part of the scene is it exposes a little of Xavier's fears, his insecurities, and even though he has such immense power and he has this very devoted group of students, he still feels insecure as a patriarch and afraid that he's engaging in a war that's potentially unwinnable, and that is an element that is present in the scene and that actually does come more into play in the sequel. The scene is very much about things I wanted to do in the next film. The scene to me was always about teapots and teacups. And frankly, that's all I ever noticed. There's a really neat blue teacup, and I just love the idea of Patrick Stewart sipping tea.
Earl Grey from The Replicator. I like that you sort of see this almost like a locker room. It's almost like the X-Men have sort of a locker room.
It's a little bit. I mean, it was trying to show the physically the uniforms, the glasses, how that all works. But when you see it, you know, try this on.
It's a lace nightie.
Actually, at one point, it was a lace nightie, and we. He says, "Whose is this?" It's mine.
It's one of mine.